Thanks, Alvaro, for your introduction, and thanks to all of you for coming today to our event, and thanks to the Atlas Foundation and the Sean Templeton Foundation for the great support and help to organize it. As you know, at our Center on Global Prosperity at Independent Institute, we have recently performed a series of case studies of entrepreneurial success in Latin America, those in Africa. Those are part of the book that we are presenting in this event, Lesson from the Poor. Some of the questions we sought answers were, if there are entrepreneurial reserves in Latin America, if so, what facilitates its development and what hinders it, and what triggers prosperity. The stories we compile make up an exciting account of the potential and achievements of poor people. We are sure that these successful stories could easily replicate themselves throughout Latin America if major obstacles to enterprise were removed. The causes of Latin America underdevelopment are very diverse and complex, and I would like to refer very briefly to two aspects that I consider are key to understand the situation in our region. We can ask ourselves why there are no more entrepreneurs in Latin America, and why many of those who are actually entrepreneurs do not manage to prevail. Personally, when I listen to those questions, immediately comes to my mind a single word, a word that, in my opinion, summarizes the roots of the problem. That word is devaluation. I'm not talking about the devaluation of the currency, an event that has taken place dozens of times in Latin American countries with the result of the poverty of millions of people overnight. I'm talking about a kind of devaluation that is even more severe and even more perverse than the one of the means of exchange, and the one that is even more ingrained in the minds and souls of the Latin American people. I'm talking about the devaluation of what constitutes a right and the devaluation of the institutions that constitute a free society. Let me show you some figures about Latin America these days. 40% of the population is still poor. In the last 30 years, every Latin American country except Chile has seen its per capita income fall as a proportion of the US income per head. The region's income per capita has only risen from about 3,500 in 1980 to about 7,000 today. In the United States, it has tripled. Between 2003 and 2005, Latin America's economy grew by 53%, but productivity grew less than 4%. The cost of not being competitive over the last 15 years is estimated to have been 1 trillion over the last 15 years. It costs the region 160 billion a year. Let us start by devaluing the concept of rights. Throughout the 20th century in Latin America, there has been a constant devaluing of the notion of what a right is and what are the rights that all human beings are granted by nature. In Latin America, governments, in their desperation to gain votes and to remain in power, have granted to their citizens dozens and dozens of pseudo-rights or false rights by reforming their national constitutions over and over. Of course, that constitution do not generate the total affections of the people in a country, but actually they help to outline a model of society. And throughout the region, so many nations kept repeating the mistake of social engineering over the years. Let's start by remembering a wonderful document, the U.S. Declaration of Independence, signed by John Hancock on July 4, 1776. Among other things, that wonderful document, that beautiful lines, said that all men are endowed with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Unfortunately, Latin American countries did not step there. They went even farther than that and invented a huge collection of pseudo rights under the guise of social rights, economic rights, environmental rights, etc. It's important to remember that rights are only one side of the coin. At the other side are the duties, the obligations. Every new right that is granted to someone generates a duty borne by someone else to fulfill those rights. Let's see very briefly some examples of this peculiar devaluation. Mexico is over there. The Mexican Constitution of 1970 is among the first ones in which a series of social rights were raised to constitutional level. Its social content gave it the title of the first modern socialist constitution. It preceded the constitution of the former Soviet Union. In addition to a charter of individual rights, the Constitution provides for a number of social rights for workers and peasants and their organizations. The Mexican Constitution recognizes social rights. The state will ensure social security, social justice, the right to organize, and an hour workday, the minimum wage, the right to strike. It was considered one of the most important labor codes at that time, or the first one major labor code at that time. But maybe Mexico has a great labor code embedded in its constitution, but it does not have its labor. Despite of those generous rights granted to its people, however, almost 10% of the Mexico population is now living in the United States. About 15% of Mexico labor force working in the United States, and 1 in every 7 Mexican workers migrates to the United States. Let's move south to Venezuela. The constitution of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela is the current constitution of the country. It was adopted in 1999. The country had 26 constitutions in use since its independence in 1811. The new constitution includes many more rights besides the usual human rights. It incorporates social human rights such as the right to employment, housing, and health care. At the Mexican, it also assigns a much larger economic role to the state than the previous constitution did. Let me share with you some key aspects of it. Social and family rights, the right to adequate, safe, and comfortable hygienic housing. Health is a fundamental social right and the responsibility of the state. All persons are entitled to social security. Work is a social fact and shall enjoy the protection of the state. Every worker has the right to a salary sufficient to enable him or her to live with dignity and cover basic material, social, and intellectual needs for himself or herself and his or her family. A vital minimum salary, stable employment. Then come cultural and educational rights. Education is a human right. Every person has the right to a full, high-quality, ongoing education. Education offered at the state institution is free of charge up to the undergraduate university level. All persons have a right to sports and recreation. Economic rights. All persons shall have the right of access to goods and services of good quality. Environmental rights. Everyone has the right, individually and collectively, to enjoy a safe, healthful, and ecologically balanced life and environment. Let's move to Brazil. A prime example of government run wild per order of the Constitution is Brazil. The 1993 document claims that among the government's fundamental objectives are to guarantee national development, eradicate poverty and substandard living conditions, to promote the well-being of all Brazilian citizens under the terms of their constitution have the right to education, health, work, leisure, security, social security, protection of motherhood and childhood, assistance to the destitute. They also have the right to a salary floor, the right to overtime that must be at least 50% higher than of a normal work, annual vacation with remuneration. They are guaranteed free assistance for children and dependents from the cradle to the grave. The government shall encourage lesser forms of social participation or promotion. Let's move to Ecuador. On September 28, 60% of the Ecuadorian voters approved the country's 20th new constitution, including the more 400 articles are the right to a free universal health care, the right to a free education up to the university level, a universal right to water and prohibition of its privatization. It also guarantees the right to quality housing, free public education, universal social security, food security, and perhaps one of the most notable features, the granting of legal rights for nature. Article 1, nature or Pachamama, where life is reproduced and exists, has the right to exist, persist, maintain, and regenerate its vital cycles, structure, functions, and its process in evolution. Every person, people, community, or nationality will be able to demand the recognitions of the rights for nature. If we were talking about a script for Saturday Night Live, it would be great, but a constitution, come on, it's too much. Nature has the right to an integral restoration. And let's move to my country of origin, Argentina. Its first constitution was written in 1853, but it was then reformed several times, and the present version is the text of 1944. Let us start with some notions that were taken from the Carta del Lavoro, or Charter of Labor, by which the Italian dictator Benito Mussolini in 1927 created a mandatory system of labor contracts. That in famous articles, the Article 14 bis, labor in several forms shall be protected by law, which shall ensure to workers paid rest and vacations, minimum vital and acceptable wage, participation in the profit of the enterprise. It doesn't say anything about losses. I don't know why. With control of production and collaboration in the management, protection against arbitrary dismissal, stability of the civil servant. It also says, our latest constitution, that the state shall grant the benefit of social security, adjustable retirements and pensions, full family protection, protection of homestead family allowances, and access to a worthy housing. Article 41, the right to a healthy and balanced environment fit for human development. And all this wasn't new in Argentina. These principles weren't strange. In 1948, Eva Perón asserted that behind each one there is a right. There were various and many generations of Argentinians who were raised with that idea, Imagine telling people from the kindergarten to the college that you have a long and long list of rights, because maybe she doesn't know, but needs and wants are endless. So that means that rights are going to be endless too. Only 1 century ago, that expression, Argentina was one of the 12 wealthiest nations on earth. In 2001, as its economy collapsed, 6 out of every 10 people became unable to meet their basic needs. Given that behind everyone there is a right, what would Eva Perón have said if someone wanted to appropriate one of her belongings or of her possessions? Finally, let's move to Guyana. Its constitution of 1980 says that every citizen is granted the basic right to a happy, creative, and productive life. So we should move there, because there might be a lot of smiling faces hanging around in Guyana. I've never been there, but it's killing me, the idea of living there. In a context like this, it's a miracle that Aniano's family in Peru, or the Aquilino Flores, and many others in Latin America managed to prevail. The process of inflation of newly promulgated rights provokes that the meaning of the concept is being reversed. Just as bad money drives out good money, so these printing press rights negate authentic rights. There is a missing question that should be added to each of the rights that we were analyzing in the Latin American constitutions. At whose expense? Shops, food, clothing, recreation, homes, medical care, education, etc., do not grow in nature. These are man-made values, goods and services produced by men. Who is to provide them? Any alleged right to one man which necessitates the violation of the rights of another is and not can be a right. The founder fathers spoke of the right to the pursuit of happiness, not the right to happiness. It means that the man has the right to take the actions he deems necessary to achieve his happiness. It doesn't mean that the other must make him happy. In Latin America, from the cradle to the grave, people are told that they have a long, long list of rights. That has the same effect on entrepreneurship than pouring some water inside the CPU of a computer. It creates passive, lazy people lacking all responsibility and self-esteem. The system regards men as sacrificial means to the ends of others, and society as an end in itself. In an open society, men are an end in themselves, and society is a means to the peaceful and voluntary coexistence of individuals. This is a simple principle in which is missing in Latin America. But I have a restriction of time, so I have to get it shorter. During the last 20 years, I've been teaching Austrian economics, mostly in Latin America and also in California. And to emphasize the ideas and the principles of a free market, I always try to use examples from the United States. I did not choose to born in Argentina, but I did to choose in America, and this is the country that I love the most. And I'm really concerned about that I have no example from here anymore. And unfortunately, all what I've been mentioned is not new, and even here in the United States. Let me remind you something. Nearly 65 years ago, during his State of the Union address on January 11, 1944, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt presented to the country his idea of a second Bill of Rights. His justification was the political rights granted by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights had proven inadequate to assure us equality in the pursuit of happiness. He believed that the nation was neither then an economic bill of rights. In Roosevelt's words, we have come to a clear realization of the fact that true individual freedom cannot exist without economic security and independence. Necessitous men are not free men. That expression, demagogues around the world are all the same. So someone said, behind each one there is a right, and he said, necessitous men are not free men. Among the rights FDR proposed were the rights to a useful and remunerative job, a decent home, good health, adequate protection from the economic fears of old age, sickness, accident, a good education, in order to make everybody able to reach human happiness and well-being. Today, many people in America are calling for the revival of this second Bill of Rights. Some of them urge the new president-elect to adopt these anti-American principles. Hopefully, this will not be the kind of change that has come to America. After all, Cuba has a big change 50 years ago, and you know what happened and how are their lives today. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bill, Frederick, and Gabriel. We are running a little bit late, so I think we'll skip the Q&A session, or we'll have it at the end of the second panel. Let's take a short 15-minute. Be back by 3, so about 12 minutes.